Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome back to Adventure Capital, where we not only discuss the entrepreneurial journeys and adventures with founders who have raised capital on WeFunder, but also the different resource providers and mentors helping founders along the way. Huzzah! In this interview, we chat with Bryce Butler, the founder of Access Ventures, a catalyst for building a more inclusive and creative economy by changing the way the world invests. Before we get on with the podcast, we're required to let everyone know that anything we say here should not be interpreted as investment advice, recommendations, or soliciting investments in any company. All companies raising on WeFunder are given an equal opportunity to participate in the podcast based on the progress of their campaign. WeFunder gang, take it away.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Adventure Capital by WeFunder, and we are for a very special live episode in the city of Louisville, Kentucky, where today I am joined by Bryce Butler, who is the founder of Access Ventures. Hello, Bryce.
Hello.
And by Natalie Benura, who is the new WeFunder Kentucky lead. Natalie, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, everybody.
And Kapow has disappeared off to Europe to launch WeFunder EU. So my illustrious co-host has disappeared. So Natalie is not only being introduced as new WeFunder team member, but also guest co-host.
Super excited.
Here in our hometown of Louisville. But Natalie, start us off. What is your role on the WeFunder team? What are you up to?
I'm the Kentucky lead, so I get to hang with founders in Kentucky, build the WeFunder base here, help them raise Empire, dominating world-class awesomeness, and help them do community rounds here. So I'm super excited.
Awesome. It's great to have you on the team, and great to have you as a guest co-host here in person in the Render Capital office. And Bryce, tell us, what is Access Ventures? You're a private foundation. What does that mean? And what does Access Ventures do here in Louisville?
Yeah, describing Access Ventures is always the trickiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Part venture.
I'm going to stop you talking in 25 minutes time.
That's fine. That's fine. The private operating foundation, the skinny of it is we function more like a public charity, but we're endowed like a foundation. So people hear foundation, they think you write grants. We don't do that. Mm-hmm. So we manage all of our capital and do the work ourselves with our amazing team around building a more inclusive and creative economy. And then what we choose to do as a foundation is to have a 100% mission-aligned portfolio. So we are targeting specifically funds, companies, public equity strategies, all gamuts of blockchain and such to do that work.
That's awesome. We'll get into that in more detail in a few minutes, but I think your personal background is really interesting. So how did you come to be running Access Ventures? What's your backstory?
Yeah. Professionally, I started in the Army. I graduated college, degree in economics, went in the Army, active duty 4 years, served in Korea for 2, reassigned to Fort Knox. Long time ago. And got out after 4 years on active duty. I got out as a captain, armor officer on tanks, loved it. Actually ended up going to seminary. I pastored a church for several years, and but not in a traditional sense. I was more of the business side of a church, and really enjoyed that work, but really, I think enjoyed the business aspects of it more. Found myself over a decade ago leaving that in a vocational sense and went and worked for a family office that was really early on in microfinance internationally, as well as an impact fund specifically in India and East Africa around energy and sustainable agriculture. And then from those experiences, as I was looking at kind of what could we do in communities like a Louisville, Kentucky, launched Access Ventures.
That is awesome. You've got a lot of different things going on in your background. I love it. Tell us a little bit about the different programs at Access Ventures and what you all have going on right now.
Yeah, presently, fundamentally, our mission is to build a more inclusive and creative economy. So that's our North Star. So the way that's manifest over time has changed. Early on, we did a lot of neighborhood strategy work.
When did you found Access Venture?
2014.
Okay.
And so we did a ton around housing and vacant and abandoned property redevelopment. And then from that work, found ourselves in small business lending, partnered up with Kiva and Jonny. That's how we met, launching Kiva Louisville back in 2015. Fundamentally rooted in the problems of people in communities. And then when you do that, you recognize that the myriad of interrelatedness around, like, so when you talk about employment, which is one of the things we're doing right now, equitable employment, people jump to living wage. But really there are a lot of inhibitors to equitable employment. That could be their incarceration record. That could be issues of transportation or benefit cliffs for part-time workers. So when you start to think about how to engage a community and an employer in building more equitable employment, it could be any number of things beyond just a living wage.
How do you, so there's like so many interrelated things that go into creating a vibrant, inclusive, creative, 2 words, right? Economy. How do you think about focusing on this thing that is like really important versus, you know, kind of trying to focus on all of the different interrelated factors, but then maybe you're at risk of spreading yourself too thin and you know, not having that focus to move the ball forward on this one particular area?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think there's 2 parts, maybe 3 parts. The partners we work with, right? What are the needs and desires that they have? And so,
and partners being,
it could be anything from community partners to funders, right? So because we're a private operating foundation, we work with a lot of different groups across the country. From we've done work with the Kauffman Foundation to local family foundations to private individuals.
And when you say community partners, you're talking nonprofits that
could be nonprofits, for-profits.
Right.
So because of our structure, we get the benefit of working with. I think sometimes what we need to do is break down this distinction between nonprofit and for-profit. That's just a tax designation. You know, nonprofits can be sustainable and make money, just like for-profits can lose money and go out of business. Like there's, you know,
many of them do. Yes.
So I think we've got to, like, for-profit, nonprofit, you know, at the end of the day, the return on investment that organization is pursuing, or return on impact, who's benefiting, I think is the fundamental question. So for AV as a nonprofit, we are targeting returns in different parts of our investment strategies. But we want to do that in a way that's in line with our mission. And in other areas, like where we can build kind of concessionary strategies, whether it's a first dollar initiative for Black and brown founders, or the work we used to do with Kiva around kind of 0% loans, that still is necessary and meaningful for communities. So again, playing across that entire capital stack.
You have like so many different things going on. When you look at your day or your week or your month, what do you get most excited about spending your time on?
I am a problem solver. I think somebody used to ask me, like, what would you do if you weren't doing this? I actually think FEMA would have been a lot of fun. I like crisis management. So I like to dive in and kind of like be that air traffic controller. So I love working rooted in those problems and really thinking about different ways to solve them. But back to your first question, it's what our funders are wanting, but I do think you have to make choices. And so we are rooted in place, and I hire smart people. I think that's the goal, right? And so my people have certain skills and abilities, and we are rooted in Louisville, Kentucky. So actually a lot of the charitable work or the kind of program work that we've done is in and around this community, because this is a community we know. And I think there's something that comes from that. And so because I'm here, we can start in the housing side, but then we can start to see that people's inability to access jobs or business owners' inability to access capital is directly related to their ability to afford better quality living conditions. And so you can start to think about different solutions to address those needs.
We've already kind of touched on this a little bit. What if, over the 8 years you've been running Access Ventures, what are some of the most striking lessons that stand out as to, you know, how to go about building a more inclusive and creative economy in a city like Louisville?
I think the one thing I keep coming back to is community problems are complex. And I think there is a difference between complex versus complicated. And so I think what happens, though, the way the kind of philanthropic industrial complex is kind of organized, you do housing, you do workforce development, you do, small business lending through a CDFI, you're a bank. And so there's not a coordinated quarterbacked effort in actually addressing the needs of those communities. So gaps are still huge and oftentimes insurmountable for those community members. So I think because they're complex, like someone's lack of affordable housing is not just brick and mortar. It is their inability to find good housing close to their work. So the transportation issues. And so I think the thing that I've learned and that I continue to press into and hope that communities across the country embrace is we need to think about more integrated kind of solutions that are across the entirety of the capital stack. Not just a grant program, not just an investment fund, but this community, in order to be a thriving community, what does it mean to thrive? Needs philanthropic efforts. Black and brown founders who have been left behind for centuries need creative capital that I am privileged to enjoy because I'm a white male in the United States. But we also still need traditional equity because we're in one of those rise of the rest cities. So how do you build a solution across that entire capital stack to make sure that founders are not left behind?
Yeah. I want to get into a little bit about how we are partnered with you guys and why we all are working together. Oh, this is awkward. This is my formal, this is the contract. This is my formal agreement to you that we are partnered.
We were hoping to sneak that one past you, bro.
Dang it. It didn't work. Oh, well. Tough. But before we go into that, I think it would be good for our listeners to talk a little bit about how you and Render are connected.
Good question. Yeah. Because I was actually going to say, well, technically, you're partnered with Render.
But I got you.
Yeah. So Render is a public benefit corporation. We launched it actually beginning this year, and it was as an initiative of Access Ventures for the last couple of years, because we're trying to create kind of some of those iterative creative solutions across the entire capital stack to build a more thriving ecosystem. We launched this thing we called the Regional Capital Strategy. We gave it a name, and it was called Render Capital. But in order for that to really succeed and to grow and to mature and to build the innovation ecosystem that this community deserves, we launched it as a standalone company. And so we are privileged to partner with them. We are privileged to be a part of that narrative and story. But that team is really taking it even further than I would have thought 2 years ago. And so they have a whole innovation as a services studio. They do creative marketing projects for corporations in the community. They have partnerships with the chamber, but then they also are building an entire capital strategy to better support founders in Louisville and Southern Indiana. So they are really building across from innovation to capital something really special for our community.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we have a matching fund with Render. They match $20K to any founders that raise on WeFunder. They match the $20K, the first $20K. So just for the listeners, that's kind of how we work with Render, but Render has come out of Access, and there's just all these different partnerships going on in Louisville, which is why it's so exciting that we're here in the city. Just talk a little bit more about why you all wanted to partner with WeFunder. And I know that Render's not necessarily the same thing anymore, but was the strategy and the process of thinking through how WeFunder was going to partner with Render something that you were involved with? And if so, what did that look like?
Oh yeah, no, I kind of back to the funder thing. So I worked with a funder around building the regional strategy that now has become Render. And the very first thing that I made sure was in there was WeFunder. Partly because of my relationship with Jonny, and the way he thinks about communities. But no, honestly, because one of the things that we realized is, the whole purpose of Render when we first started it was the major problem we were solving was a capital access issue. If you have ever done kind of ESO or entrepreneurial support work, people will talk about the three-legged stool for communities. They need density to be successful, like concentration of high qualified entrepreneurs and close proximity is always a good thing. You need mentorship and training, technical assistance to help them along their journey. And then you need capital. One of the things that Louisville's always been good at is technical assistance, mentorship, people willing to show up and help you. density is always a thing that you're working towards and growing. But one thing that also is kind of connected to density is capital. And so institutional capital has been really non-existent here, and other types of capital. So when we really built it, because of our national partnerships with the Global Accelerator Network and our work with Kaufman around the Capital Access Lab and revenue-based financing, only 1% of companies ever take venture. 83% of companies cobble it together in some other way. So outside of banks that aren't lending sub 100,000 and less than 2 years of experience with no personal guarantee, or venture, where's a founder going to go? So we keep losing that density because of this massive capital gap. And part of that solution is an amazing platform called WeFunder. Now there are other platforms, but because of relationship with Jonny and different things like that, and the fact that they're a pioneer, I was like, we've got to do something in this crowdfunding community round equity space to help support founders. I love it also because the way you create wealth in any community is through ownership. Historically, our nation is focused on home ownership. That still is a thing, but another great way to continue to boost wealth and to kind of solve the wealth inequality gap that we see is business ownership. And I fundamentally believe community rounds, very much in the name, community, allow for customers and community members to participate financially in the success of the enterprises that they support. So I think there's that dual benefit. And when we first built this in 2019, early 2020, there were no WeFunder campaigns anywhere in our MSA. There were a lot of misconceptions about what that was. And so we started this match initiative to kind of boost attention and activity and excitement around this and we've seen some really cool changes in the last year. The Reg CF change, that's I think really made a massive difference.
And we've had a number, and that's even before Natalie joined the team, right? And so now Natalie's full-time on the team.
What?
And we're increasing the match fund to 1.5 million, which is amazing.
Yeah, I think the goal was that all along, but you got to start somewhere and you got to build that momentum. And we've seen, I don't know, almost a dozen companies so far in our MSA pursue a WeFunder match. And now we're excited to extend that to 1.5 million and to help more companies get on there. My dream would be that we start to see more of the Mercuries of the world. You know, we've got a ton of companies that'll raise a $3 million institutionally led round in our market. Man, open that up another 500,000 for your community and customers. How amazing would that be?
I was talking to Gil Holland about that over coffee just a few minutes ago, and it's like, I think the key for WeFunder in Louisville is like, can we get that banner raised, right? The Mercury, the Replit, that like then, because every conversation I have with the founder talking about Mercury, and it's like, okay, what's the equivalent in Louisville that like those guys launch, and then every founder in Louisville wants to do it because it's like, oh my goodness, these guys did it. And
well, I mean, we've got them. I mean, there's Climavision just closed on 100 million from TPG in the last 18 months. Like, what if they had raised 5 million? You know, AboutBit is one of our portfolio companies, just closed on
and the other thing with those companies as well is like the fundraising's easy, right? If it's a pre-seed or seed, then like to raise 500K, it's like, it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of meetings with investors, a lot of emails, it's a lot of social media posts, etc. But if you're, Series C and you're just allocating 5 million to your customers, then it's like send an email, raise the $5 million in a day, get back to run the business. So the effort is a lot less as well.
Yeah, Natalie, back to your question too. Like, I do think the other thing we want to do is kind of like the work Jonny and I did around Kiva, was the Kiva community work, is can we in Louisville, Kentucky, through the First in the Nation Match Fund.
First in the nation.
But I think it's really interesting, in the work we've done with the Global Accelerator Network, or I used to be on the board of Village Capital, there are so many more communities like Louisville, Kentucky than like Silicon Valley. How do we get those community builders, those ecosystem builders, those capital providers to see this as an unbelievable way, a part of the capital stack to support entrepreneurs in their community with the types of capital they need? It can be equity, it can be venture debt, it can be traditional debt, but it really provides a great opportunity for that community to win as a community.
What do you... You've kind of already talked about this over the last few minutes, but just kind of love you to say a little bit more about what you're excited about WeFunder bringing in terms of like an additional option for founders in Louisville? Like most people listening, maybe, I don't know, like especially, I lived in Silicon Valley for 10 years in San Francisco, been in Nashville for the last 2 years, which is probably has a lot of characteristics that Louisville shares. So I've kind of seen, some of the challenges that founders have in accessing capital. But for you, like what do those challenges look like for early stage founders on the ground in Louisville? And how do you see WeFunder and this community round concept helping to bridge some of those gaps?
Yeah, I mean, the challenges are investors actually putting money into companies. I think one of the things we're working on right now is around investor education. Because a lot of investors, it's human nature. Like if I am going to walk into this room and I don't know what I'm talking about and I'm going to look stupid, I'm not going to walk into that room.
Yeah.
And so if I'm a person, I have some wealth and I might be interested in investing, but I feel like I don't have anything to offer or provide, and I'm not going to walk in, I'm just not going to go in. I'm going to leave my money parked with my wealth manager, and they're going to get me the financial return I need, and then I don't have to feel uncomfortable walking into that room. So we've got to do more education of investors so that they feel more comfortable. I feel WeFunder is a great way for people to begin to experience and learn, to take a step and to build a portfolio, and to start to read through the DDQs, if you will, like the diligence documents that are provided on the WeFunder platform. Oh, okay, that's what they're talking about when they say that word. I think those are great ways to kind of help baby step people towards more active participation as investors. And so we need more capital. We need more. So the pain points founders face is there truly is not enough institutionally backed capital here. And so then they might be able to get that angel round, that seed round, but then the minute they need to get that next round of funding, the big concern, the big fear is I'm going to have to leave this community. And then everybody clamors for the state. Well, what's the state doing? And you just can't rely on public funds to close those gaps. It's just not ever going to catch up with where the private markets are. So we've got to build that. I think one of the things I love about WeFunder from the founder side is raising money is lonely. And so I think when you raise a community round, there's a point of validation that founder receives, and also connection. Yeah. Right. To the people investing.
Tyler Hayes is the founder of Atom Limbs that raised with us, and we interviewed him for the podcast. And he said that when you raise from VCs, you have 100 meetings and you hear, even if it's a successful round, you hear 97 no's, and 3 yeses. Yeah. So it feels like 97% no. Whereas when you raise on WeFunder, as he did, I think you raised 5 million, you hear just thousands of yeses, and everyone's writing these messages like, oh, super excited to invest. I served with these kind of veteran, in the military. My kind of colleague lost a limb. Like, if you guys are making better prosthetic limbs, so excited to be a part of it. And he said, it feels like yes, because you're seeing literally thousands of yeses. And also, you don't really see the no's. Like, if someone doesn't want to invest, they just don't invest. But you don't see that. Yeah. And so it was a really interesting.
Well, it's the same thing when we were launching Kiva Communities, right? Right. It's like you have immediately brand ambassadors, new customers. Right. When somebody becomes an investor, an owner in a sense, right? They're vested in the success of your business. And so that's a powerful tool. And then we've also seen connections, oh, wow, you do that, purchase orders, those types of things, collaborations among different companies as well.
Yeah, we really are building, the momentum, the investment, the excitement, it all grows as their campaign grows. So yeah, super exciting. What would be one company you would want to see on WeFunder? I'm so glad you asked me this question.
We want a long list, Bryce.
No, I'm going to give you my one.
Okay.
And so
we want a long list of companies for Natalie to go and
I'll get that after
over the coming
Natalie
days.
Knows my one. So my one is the Louisville City FC.
And once you said that, I have been...
I know.
Yeah. That is now my goal.
Yeah. I got to give it up for Sheldon Grizzle in Chattanooga and what they did there. First in the nation, kind of major league, kind of professional sport, crowd community round. It was awesome. So I'm an investor in that. And I'm like, gosh, I'd love to do the same for my home
so fun.
Town team.
Yes. I'm down. We gotta find the right person, and then we just gotta get them in the right room.
They gotta need $5 million for something. I mean, come on, open it up. Community.
Or they don't, and it'll just be pocket change for them, right? And
let the people invest. Get more people showing up for your home game.
I mean, I remember I took a tour there before it even opened, and the excitement that they told me they had around the suites and renting the suites and like having a whole season of the suites, they were like sold out in one day on those. And so I'm like, okay, one $5 million round, like they would sell out in a day, but then they'd have like a ton of investors in the city. So that is my goal.
More passionate fan base. More passionate army of supporters.
That's right.
Let's make it happen, Team Louisville City FC.
Hope you're listening.
Okay, last question, Bryce. We ask this for every guest. One piece of advice that you have. You are a founder yourself. You've worked with hundreds of founders over the last decade. One piece of advice for founders.
Yeah, I think I think sometimes it's the timing of the question. I'm literally leaving next week on a sabbatical. So I think it's take care of yourself.
Congratulations.
Make sure you take care of yourself.
You and me both. My sabbatical coming up 6 weeks in Europe.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, that's an awesome
I'm
note
going to go on a sabbatical too, I think.
Natalie, second month on the job.
That's right.
3 months sabbatical coming up.
I'm just kidding, guys. I'm staying right here.
Well, that is an even better note to end on. Natalie's upcoming sabbatical. Bryce, thanks so much, man. Me and Bryce would go back to 2014, working on Kiva City Louisville together. It's been really, really exciting to take that partnership to new heights at WeFunder with this matching fund. So we're looking forward to accelerating the deployment of that over the coming months and years. And thanks for coming on the podcast. Try to publish it this time.
Where can people learn more about you guys?
accessventures.org, and then Render is workwithrender.com or render.capital.
Sweet.
You're the man, Bryce.
Thank you.
Natalie, you're the woman.
Woo!
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Adventure Capital. I hope you laughed, took notes, shed a tear, and most importantly, feel ready to go off on your own adventure. And remember, whenever you're ready, WeFunder's here to help. Be sure to like and leave a review, gang.